Good evening, and welcome to the happenings in Medfield. There's no doubt you're aware of the fact that on a monthly basis, I have the opportunity of sitting with Mike Sullivan, the town administrator, to discuss the happenings in Medfield. What is happening and what has happened in the past. And so without further ado, one more time, and I always enjoy it, Mike Sullivan, the town administrator, and our discussion. Hi, Mike.
Hi, Jack, and it's a good thing we haven't kept count of how long we've been doing this. It probably would scare both of us to think of it.
I wouldn't want to try, really.
No, we were sitting here talking about how long it's been since various things have happened and how fast time goes by. So it makes you realize that we're getting a bit older.
A bit.
Yes.
You know, the old adage, I believe, Mike, they don't, time and tide waits for no one.
That's right, yes, yeah. But it beats the alternative, I guess, huh? Getting older. So.
Weather-wise, you and I have sat here, discussed it when it was spring and the summer.
That's
and now
right.
we're going right into the winter.
Getting the cold weather, but the good news is in about another month, the days start getting longer, so we can survive another 4 weeks. We'll start crawling out of the hole towards spring and summer.
That's about it.
And I did hear on the way down driving here, I heard the National Weather Service is predicting that the weather for this winter for New England will be above average temperature. So I hope they're right, and the Farmer's Almanac is wrong. They were predicting a blizzard in February around Super Bowl time. So I vote for the warm weather. So.
I am too. I'm very partial to it, but because I come from a place that had seasons, forget it. We don't even talk about it that time.
That's right. You don't even talk about the weather because there is no weather. It's always the same.
That's about right. I think that's why I enjoy New England, because of the seasons.
Well, I enjoyed it until the last couple of weekends when I've been out spending 9 or 10 hours a week raking leaves, only to go out the next morning and it looks worse than when I started.
I know what you mean. I have done that myself. I feel, gee, it looks nice around, and I get up that morning and I haven't touched it.
Yes. I think leaves are wonderful when you're a little kid and you can jump in them. And when you're too old to rake and you can go up to Vermont and look at them. But in the meantime,
that's a good philosophy. Well, we get started, Mike. Let's talk about taxes.
Yes, well, the annual tax rate setting time has arrived. The Board of Assessors are coming in to meet with the Board of Selectmen. The Selectmen are required, as part of the tax rate setting process, to have what's called a classification hearing to decide whether or how to classify property for taxation purposes. And in Medfield, it's not much of an issue because we're 94% residentially based. We classify everything as one, which means we only have one tax rate. Some of the communities with a lot of commercial industrial properties will have what's called a split tax rate, where they have a higher tax rate for commercial industrial properties and a lower tax rate for residential. We aren't able to do that without driving out industry and commercial business from town, because the shift would be so great for business and industry and so slight for residential property. It would be silly to do it. But we're required to do it anyway before we can set the tax rate. So we'll have a public hearing and the selectmen will vote not to classify or to classify everything as one. And that will take place on the 27th of November. And then next Monday, the treasurer collector, the assistant assessor, the town accountant, and myself will be meeting with the representative from the Division of Local Services to review the material for setting the tax rate. It used to be about 4 or 5 pages, and now it's about 40 pages. And actually, it isn't pages anymore because it's all done over the computer. Even the signatures of the assessors and the selectmen now, they sign electronically. But the tax rate will not be different You've already paid 2 estimated tax bills in August and November, and the actual bills for this fiscal year will be due February 1st to May 1st. And the assessors figure everything into the estimated bills, so there will be very little change from the bills that you've already paid in August and November. In fact, they would go down slightly, and they will go down slightly for some people because the actual tax rate will be a few cents lower than the estimated tax rate that the estimated bills are based on. The problem is that we're required every single year now to revalue property. So if your property goes up more than the average of the town, you could possibly pay a small bit more in your tax bill. If it goes up less than the rest of the town, you would pay a little bit less. So it's hard. I can tell you on a general basis that the bill should go down slightly, but it depends on how your particular property is affected by the reval. But the rates are, I think it's going to be up around between 3 and 4% this year. And that in part is because of the addition of the debt service on the town garage and the addition of the pension, additional pension costs. But it's tax rates have been going up much less than they had in past years. 10, 12 years ago, when we were in the middle of our school building construction phase, the tax rate was going up about 6 to 10% a year. Now we're down. Last year it didn't go up at all. This year we're talking probably about between 3 and 4%. The year before I think was 2.7%. So we are doing better.
Happy about that.
Well, no one's ever happy about taxes, including myself. But what do they say? There's only 2 certainties in life: death and taxes. So.
Yeah, that's about the extent of it, really.
Yes. We do have another, I know many people are not happy with the water bills they just got.
That's what I wanted to ask you
The
about.
Water and Sewer Board had a public hearing and discussed the rates, and we recall what we've been warning for a number of years, that because of all the requirements of the Clean Water Act and DEP regulations, that the water rates would be going up, and this is the year that it hit, and it happened to hit in a year when we had a very dry summer, so many people use more water than usual watering their lawns. So we have had some people that have experienced a rather sizable increase in their water bills. The one good thing about water bills is you can always keep it down by using less water, so there is some potential to impact that bill. And the state is always trying to encourage us to use less water anyway as a conservation measure. So,
well, like that, we had discussed previously regarding the water. We're allowed 65 gallons a day. Was that still not an effect?
It's a target, yes. Well, they were using it as a target for what we should be using, 65 gallons per person per day. And they say we're a little above that. I think last calculation we had it was something like 67, 68 gallons per person per day. So we have a little ways to go. But there are some people that are arguing that that's still too high, that it should be 50 gallons per person per day. I don't know. It seemed to me New England is one of the most water-rich regions of the country, and yet we are being told to use less than other parts of the countries that have very little water resources. So it's kind of a conundrum, but I think we do need to conserve water as much as possible, particularly this year because we're in a little bit of a mini drought. It seemed like the spring was very wet, and then all of a sudden it stopped, and the summer and fall have been extremely dry. I think we're about 6.5 inches below
very dry.
average rainfall. Yeah. So But that's those things fluctuate from time to time, and
I
you do
have
the
a
best you can.
question with you, Mike, the budget.
The budget, yes. Well, we're just using the budgets from last year to set the tax rate, which we were just talking about, and we're starting to prepare the budgets for next year, which, believe it or not, is fiscal 15. That's the year that starts July 1st. The selectmen had their annual budget meeting and met with the department heads and distributed the budgets, and they're due, the end of December, and then the warrant committee will start reviewing them. We worked out some guidelines asking department heads to stick to try to come in at 2.5% increase. However, we are estimating pensions and health insurance at a 8% increase because of the uncertainty over the national health insurance, and we also have been told that on average the Norfolk County retirement assessments will be going up 10% next year. You may have read a lot in the papers recently about the difficulties many cities have meeting their pension and health insurance obligations to retired employees, and how it's forcing some cities into bankruptcy. There have been a number of them. I think Detroit, there's been a couple in California, Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. And we are trying to address that, try to get some sort of a funding schedule, maybe not full funding, but at least begin to address our pension and health insurance obligations for retired employees. One of the problems that has made this more difficult is the artificially low interest rates that are being held down by the Federal Reserve, particularly on short-term rates. We used to get maybe 4 or 5% on interest on our investment available funds, and now we're lucky if we get 0.1% or 0.2%, and it's dramatically altered the interest earnings that the town has. One year, when we were flush with cash and the rates were high, we made $800,000 on interest on available funds. This past year, we made $24,000. So you've got a loss of, nearly $750,000 just on interest earnings. And that also affects pension funds because they rely on the income from investments to fund themselves. And if your income from investments has fallen 80–90%,
Oh, yeah.
makes it a lot more difficult to fully fund your systems. So it's, on the one side, when you go to borrow money for town garage, you take advantage of the low interest rates. On the other side, when you want to invest your available funds, you get burned by the low interest rates. So there's never a happy medium, I guess.
No, you never do, you never don't. Moving on to building, how is the town garage coming?
Town garage is coming along. We would like to see a little bit faster progress on the mortar, the blocks they're putting in. We're hoping to get there's an office wing and then 2 garage wings off that on either side, and we were hoping to have those so that they could put the roof on and enclose the building for the winter, which would make it a lot easier to work in a heated building than in the cold air outside. They're just finishing up on one of the garage wings. They're hoping to finish it up on the office wing by the end of next week, although that, with Thanksgiving next week, that may be a little difficult. And the other wing is just barely started, so it's a little bit behind in that regard. But other than that, it's coming along great. I mean, there haven't been a lot of cost overruns. The sub seems to be working, subcontractors seem to be working fairly well. And I think people are going to be very pleased with the results of it. You know, there'll always be some that say, why do we need such a big garage? But I think Medfield has always tried to do things up well and to have them last, to take care of its property. So we'll see.
You know, the other area of building regarding the fire department, police department.
Yes, an architect was hired in September, I believe, and those architects have been working with the police chief, fire chief, and the permanent planning and building committee to come up with a preliminary design for the police station, and hopefully schematic designs to take back to town meeting in the spring to go forward with that project. We'd like to move on that while the interest rates are low, once again, because that saves you a considerable amount of money.
How does it look? Will it look, Mike, starting that program? Any idea?
Well, the building will be in the same location. In fact, I was out just before I came down here today with the chiefs. We're probably going to relocate the fire department temporarily to the town garage during construction, and we're looking for a site to relocate the police department to temporarily during construction, because the architects and the building committee tell us it's much easier to work, it's a much faster construction period, and can save you money if you have a clear site to work with. Initially, we were talking about phasing construction, where we would move the fire department but keep the police department there, build a new police portion of the public safety building, and when that was finished, move the police into that from the old police station, then tear it down. That's, given the small size of the site that has a lot of constraints to it, it appears that it's going to be much better if we're able to relocate both the police and fire, tear everything down, and start from scratch. So I think that's the way we're headed. I saw the preliminary sketches, elevation plans for the building, and I think people are going to like it. I think they'll be very pleased with the design of the building. I know the chiefs are very happy with the appearance of it and the layout. They've been working for the last several weeks now with the architects, trying to come up with what spaces are needed and how they need to relate to each other. You know, if you have a room for the firefighters to put on their protective clothing, it needs to be near the equipment bays, and the police dispatch area needs to be near the front door, and all those other considerations that come in.
A lot of work involved.
Yes, yeah, but I think the chiefs are very pleased with the initial results of it, and I think hopefully after the new year we'll start to get information out to the public so they can see exactly what's being proposed and be ready for town meeting.
My driving on 109, Starbucks is doing nothing but cars, so people are...
Wow, where do all those SUVs come from? I can say that because I have one myself, but you know, I look out there and it seems like Starbucks is always busy.
Yeah, people there all the time.
It's a roaring success, and if you like your coffee, high test.
Yeah, and Dunkin' Donuts looks like that they're increasing their business.
Yes, they are. You know, of course, everyone was worried about the traffic, you know, cars being able to get in and out of there. That is a difficult site to maneuver in and out, particularly during commuter hours, but they seem to be holding their own, and I think probably over time they'll gradually increase. So
they're happy about it. Now the question, have you anything, I hear nothing but rumors, relative to Roach Brothers and the Old Lord Building?
Well, Roach Brothers, they came in, probably about 5 or 6 weeks ago now, and met with the selectmen and to present their preliminary design on it. And they are going forward. They've met with the planning board, and they have to work out things with the Board of Health and with the Board of Appeals. So they've got a long way to go, but it's moving along. They still have every intention of going forward with the project, and this is going to be the first of what they hope will be a number of these type of smaller department or grocery stores. So I don't think they're going to be done by February, which was their
That's what I was
original
going to
intent.
ask you.
No, I don't think they'll be through all the hearings with the different town boards by February. It took some time to get their plans in order and to have them the way they wanted them, but hopefully the results, the wait will be worth it. And I think it's going to be a big convenience to people. It's amazing how activities picked up in the center. We just had a Peruvian restaurant open up by Bullard's there at the corner of North and Green Street. There are a couple of issues with them. I guess they're working out in terms of parking and alcoholic beverage licensing and things like that. But I did walk by and peek in, and it's very attractive. They've done a very nice job. It was the old Village Pizza place right next to Bullett's package store. So and I've talked to a couple of people that have been there, and they're very happy with the food.
Good.
We also had the Chinese takeout restaurant open.
That's there on North Street.
Yes, yes. And I don't know whether it's the initial flush of business that people want to try it out, or it's word of mouth. Apparently they have another similar store in Wellesley that's very popular. So we'll have to see how that works out. And that'll be a nice convenience for the town.
No.
And the last one, before I forget, is the frozen yogurt and pizza place on Park Street. They came in for their common vittler's license. They're coming before the selectmen next week. So that's nearing completion.
Good.
And what could be better in January than frozen yogurt?
True.
Although they say that's the best time to eat ice cream, and frozen yogurt is when it's cold rather than when it's hot. It doesn't melt as fast. So.
Mike, when you were talking about the town garage, I meant to ask you, what is their target date on completion?
Target date is August of 2014. So they had 365 days from the date they were, the contract was authorized to proceed, and that was in August sometime. So if they can pick up speed, if the temperatures are indeed above normal this winter and they get those buildings enclosed and heated, they get back on schedule and they should be able to complete it by then. There is a liquidated damages clause or damage delay clause, I guess it's called, where if they don't finish within 365 days, the town's entitled to some additional funding back from the contractor. But I think it's a pretty straightforward building. A lot of the tough work has already been done. It's underground, the underground utilities and footings and whatnot. Yeah. And it looked for a long time like nothing was happening because everything was underground. Public Works was a great help on that. They did a lot of good work in terms of the drainage and the paving and the excavating. They were really saved the town a lot of money. And of course they should. It's going to be their own building. It's going to be their home away from home, as they say.
Very true.
But I think the building committee and even the general contractor are quite pleased with the work that's been done by the Public Works Department. Toughest thing has been getting electrical service in there. That's been proving to be a real challenge. Hopefully, we're being told that probably the week after next, they should have a temporary electrical service in there, but we'll see.
And now, Mike?
Let me guess. You don't have to start the state hospital.
Right.
Yes. There is some progress to report on it. The negotiating committee has been working with the state. As you know, the state offered the property to the town for $4.4 million, and the town thought that we could strike a little bit of bargain on that. So the mediation committee went back to work and meeting with DCAM, and they are making some progress. There are still a few issues to work out. If that's the case, they will probably be some action at either the annual or special town meeting to give the voters a say as to whether the town should buy the property and try to decide to give the town the ability to determine the future use, or whether there's too much risk involved in acquiring the property with the potential contamination from lead paint and asbestos and mold and whatever in those buildings up there.
Well, then I understand the mold and the situations relative to those old buildings. I've had a lot of comments about the old buildings. I've been told they ought to tear them down. I mean, there's
Yes.
no need for them.
Well, that ought to be an interesting town meeting when we get to that point between the people who want to buy the state hospital and the people who think we might be putting ourselves at too much risk by buying the property and having to deal with the potential cleanup cost. And it should be fun, you know. I hope I'd be able to sit back on the sidelines and watch them go at each other. And
Yeah, watch it.
sort of like what happened in Milford recently with the pros and the cons on the casino.
Yeah.
It was surprising. Everyone thought it was going to be a lot closer.
No casinos.
Yes,
No, no go.
It looks like Massachusetts is going to have be the only state that's approved gambling, but has no place to put it. So,
How true.
where there's everybody wants gambling casinos in the state, but nobody wants them in their backyard. So,
And a lot of people don't want casinos.
yes, I understand that they've collected enough signatures, or they think they have, to put it on the ballot to rescind the whole casino law. And I tend to fall on their side. I'm not really much of a gambler myself, and I think it tends to be a tax on the poor. Of course, I argue with people who say, well, it's recreation, it's a lot of fun, and it brings
I
money
know
into
how
the
that
state.
happens.
But
One more question before we close. The tower, the water tower, the new one. Are they going to build? What are they going to do?
yes, well, it was interesting because last night I was here till about 9:15 with the Water and Sewer Board members and Ken Feeney, who, among his other hats, is the water superintendent. And we interviewed two engineering firms, really, to design the water tower and the water mains that will connect the water tower to well number 6 up by the Sherburne town line. And they have selected an engineering firm to undertake the design, and there's a lot to be done. You know, there's a railroad crossing up on Hospital Road as you head out towards 27, and that's an active railroad line, so you have to figure a way to get the pipe under the railroad tracks without disrupting the regular schedule of train service. It's primarily a freight line, but I believe there are about 4 or 5 trains a day that use that line, so you have to work around their schedule. And then they have to select the type of design for the water tower itself. And there are a lot of considerations in there. One of the things that we were talking about last night was that the cost to paint a water tower is sometimes greater than the cost to build it. Now, granted, these water towers are big and they're high, and you have to have staging and specialized workers who aren't afraid to go up that high. Then there's the problem of vandalism. You know, we were all kids, and we all liked to throw rocks when we were kids. And
Oh,
and I know on Mount Nebo there's been a lot of dings on the water tower from kids throwing rocks. So some of the designs have concrete bases so that they won't be damaged by rocks and graffiti. Another thing is for kids to try to climb up the water tower and paint class of whatever on the water tower. And one of the approaches to that is to put the ladder up high enough that you can only reach it with a fire truck ladder or a bucket truck or something. So they'll be working on that, and hopefully they're hoping to come up with a bid price, put it out to bid and have a firm fixed price for building the tower when they get to town meeting. If not, they hope to have very firm estimates. It is critical, you know, we have not been able to use that water tower for anything but backup storage in the event of a large fire in the town where you had to draw down your Mount Nebo water tank. Then you might be able to use this. But other than that, we are a bit at risk until we get that second water tower built.
That's very true.
And the estimate for building the water tower, the latest figures is be around somewhere around $3 million now. That can vary up or down depending on the type of design. And as one of the engineers pointed out, the market for steel can change quite a bit. You know, it can go up or down in the course of 6 months by 10, 15, 20, 25%, depending on what's going on in China and who's on strike and whether the iron ore market is up or down. A lot of factors that can influence
Very, very true.
the price of steel. And one of the interesting designs that we took a look at was they're now building tanks with fiberglass with steel in between. So you get fiberglass on either side.
Mm-hmm.
And you don't have to paint them because they're fiberglass. So that saves a lot.
That'll be helpful.
On the money, yeah. One of the reasons I never realized this until we painted the Mount Nebo water tower is one of the reasons it's so expensive. You have to paint the inside as well as the outside.
Oh.
So you have to drain down the tank, and guys have to get inside. And if it's difficult to paint the outside, I can't imagine what it's like to have to paint the inside of one of these tanks. They are making progress on that. There's legislation to have the land turned over to the town by the state. The state still owns all that property up there. And DCAM is supporting the legislation, but it's got to go through the legislature and be both branches, then be signed off by the governor. We're hoping to have that done in time for town meeting so that we can move forward with the tank as quickly as possible.
So you got a lot on the plate. Speaking of that,
yes.
I see the old clock on the wall as usual, bringing our meeting here, the anchor desk, happenings in Medfield, to a close. And I usually ask, as you know, is there anything you'd like to add before we say goodnight?
Sure. Well, of course, with Thanksgiving coming up, I'd like to wish everybody a happy and a healthy Thanksgiving. And for those of you who are traveling, low traffic levels, or uncrowded airports or train stations, however your mode of travel is. For those of you who are staying at home, consider yourself lucky and enjoy the relatives that are traveling on those roads and planes and trains coming to see you. But also I'd like to thank Ron Griffin and all the other people that helped put on a wonderful breakfast for veterans on Veterans Day, and the ceremonies that evening at the Baxter Park honoring our veterans, I think, were really a sign of the town's commitments to its veterans, and I think the town did itself proud. And I think for a first time out of the ballpark with this breakfast, it was a spectacular success, and Ron deserves a lot of credit for the idea.
Mike, I also got to throw credit to you with all the pancakes. I mean, there was quite a few people there, and I know that you were there in the kitchen.
Well, there's a whole crew, and actually I let John Nath, the building inspector, do the cooking. I made the batter, so but we ended up with only 2 pancakes left over, so we considered that a pretty good track record. Of course, we had several other people, Tony Santori and Tom Sweeney, and there were several other people there helping out in the kitchen, and then we had a number of high school students who were there serving.
Very good.
And it was really nice. It was a fun day.
It was a very, very nice breakfast. Well, Mike, I want to thank you very much once again. I always like to close with the state hospital, as you know.
Yes.
We've been doing this for I don't know how many years.
I know someday it would be wonderful to come down here and not close with the state hospital, have everything resolved up there. So
that's
yes.
True. So, in closing, I want to thank you, and you have a happy Thanksgiving.
You too, Jack. Enjoy it.
This is Jack Peterson wishing you and yours the very best. Good night.
Hi, I'm Bob McGuire, and you're watching Medfield.tv.
This program was made possible through the generous support of your Medfield friends and neighbors, folks just like you. And thanks for watching.